Well, thank you very much, Devon. You didn't realise you were coming tonight to get out of your comfort zone, do you? We have got about 15 minutes where the division bell hasn't gone, and we're on time. And I'd like to invite questions either to the panel, to Philippa, or basically to, if you just want to make a contribution. You know, don't need to feel that you have to ask a question, just make a statement. So, who's going to kick us off before I invite somebody? Malcolm.
Malcolm Gardner from the Welfare Reform Club. I'd like to ask quite a controversial question, actually, of you, Steve, and also of you as well, please. Which is, do you think it's about time that the job centre, in all its glory, now came to local authorities as a local function?
I'll start on that. The great thing about Malcolm is he lives in Leeds. He will occasionally write to members in Leeds about that. It's only on my desk. Actually, I don't think jobs like that should come to local authorities, but what I do think there needs to be a completely different relationship. And I think there needs to be a completely different way of delivering benefits. I think what we've got in universal credit is something which is simplifying some of the scheme, but what we've got outside of that is still hugely complex. And in fact, creating universal credit has in itself created more complexities outside it. So we have situations where if people need help with the rent, they go to universal credit. If they need extra help with the rent, they come to the local authority. People need help with the living cost, they go to universal credit. If they've actually got some exceptional circumstances, they come to the local authority instead. If they've got children and there's issues there and they need extra payments, they come to the local authority. So it's really complex about who goes where. And I don't think we'll ever be able to provide the right kind of support to people out of work and in work whilst we've got two very separate benefit delivery systems that are trying to do the same thing. So I think we need to have a completely different relationship. I think we need to have a very different delivery model that has a role for Job Centre Plus and a role for the local councils. The final thing I'll say about this, because I think this is really important, the thing that concerns me most about universal credit, and particularly about the universal credit delivered by Job Centre Plus, is that housing support, housing cost support, which is a very local issue, and which at the moment has enormous accountability to elected members, when it rolls into universal credit, there will be absolutely no accountability at a local level for the way that housing cost support is delivered. And in Leeds, the way we deliver it makes a huge difference to homelessness. It makes a huge difference to supported accommodation. It is used to talk to those providers. And I have no confidence that when it's part of a big Job Centre Plus, a national Job Centre Plus, that they will know or understand the local pressures and that they will be accountable in any way at all to a local area. So I think for that reason, and perhaps that reason mainly, there needs to be a new delivery model in place.
Okay. That's a pretty full answer. Do you want to add anything to that or not?
I would only add, certainly from a landlord's point of view, Malcolm, I'm perfectly happy if we are co-located, if we talk to each other, if we can rely on each other and share a bit more information. It's the sharing of information that I'm more worried about.
Anybody else want to contribute to this before I ask Malcolm to say whether he thinks the question has been answered yet?
I'm with Paul. Jennifer Winston, London Borough Hackney. With regards to the delivery model, the biggest problem that is very quickly emerging in London is not only do we have universal credit live service for JSA singles, we also have universal credit digital service for everybody else. I am lucky enough to only have one resident in receipt of universal credit so far because I haven't gone live yet, don't go live till the end of the month. The poor woman who has received universal credit or not is completely confused. She is bounced between because people don't don't stay still in London. She has bounced between Universal Credit Live, Universal Credit Digital. She's been in 2 refuges, one in Sutton, one now in Tower Hamlets, so she comes under support and exempt accommodation, so is now having to claim housing benefit again, and is also having to claim DHP. Her arrears on our appointment are ridiculous. It's quite likely that her children will be taken into care, and she was previously a care leaver herself. The current system of delivery and rollout of all these different types of universal credit and support and exempt accommodation and housing benefit is not working for some people in London, and things are going to get worse very, very soon. She's now come back into temporary accommodation for the second time, and she's at risk of losing her children.
Julian Cliff, London Borough, Sutton. Just to add to what Jennifer was saying, we're actually running the digital and live service of Universal Credit alongside each other. And I don't want to sort of start bashing anybody about Universal Credit, but
You will.
I will. What we found, the most vulnerable residents in Sutton are the ones that are being affected and the ones that are most troubled by Universal Credit, purely because of the 2 services that are running. The DWP staff are completely mixed up with what information to give what customer. So we've got customers on employment support allowance, customers on disability living allowance, who are being advised that they don't need to claim Universal Credit when they do. And they're being pushed from pillar to post. So yeah, so just to sort of mirror what Jen was saying, that it's as it is at the moment, it's not working as well as it should. And the support that we should be delivering from both sides, from DWP side and from local authority side, we're not allowed to give. We don't know what support we should be giving because the customers don't know what they should be claiming.
So what I'm hearing at the moment is that there are currently problems in the live running of Universal Credit. But I'm also hearing that there needs to be a new form of delivery model. So, anybody else? Or, yeah, sure.
James, have you got back in North East Somerset? I've got a question, Steve, in a sense on if your conditionality for council tax support scheme is for people to engage with you on job seek for land, what do the DWP do? Isn't that their job?
Yeah.
What do you do that's different, and how's that going to change on the universal credit?
It's a good question. I mean, we're trying to work with Job Centre Plus on this, so we will pick up the GSA cases after 6 months. We think once they've been with DWP for 6 months, if they haven't got a job, then perhaps we need to intervene as well, provide something a little bit different. I think the difference between what we do as a local authority and what Job Centre Plus do as the statutory agency for employment, I think it boils down to the approach. We will sit down with the person and we will say, what is it that you think you need? And it's not just in relation to skills and jobs and CVs and all that. It's whatever else they think they need. Now, with some of the people, it's about confidence. With some of the people, it's purely social skills. It's getting out. It's recognising there's a neighbourhood there. It's recognising that there are facilities within the area. And sometimes Job Centre Plus don't know about those facilities. So we will provide additional information, additional help. We will work with them on the things that they think they need, rather than imposing on them, potentially imposing on them, things that we think they need. That's critical to this. If we go out there and say, we want you to do X, Y, and Z, then I think we won't get the same response. What we say to people is, come have a chat with us, and we'll see how we can help you. And for some people, the answer is, actually, there's not a great deal more we can do for you, because you're doing absolutely everything there is. But it'd be great if you could keep in touch with us. For others, we can say, have you thought about it? Do you think that's realistic? And I'm sure Job Centre Plus do some of that. But we kind of pick it up after 6 months. We want Job Centre Plus to do their job. And within 6 months, they're good at getting a lot of people back into work. After that, it can take a little bit longer. And that's what we think we need to kick in. The real test for us is going to be next year when we expand it to the cases we've already got, not just new JSA cases. So we're dealing with JSA cases that have been in JSA, some cases for 10 years. And it'll be really interesting then to see whether the approach that we bring to it, the talking to people about what they need rather than what we think they need, actually has some success where up to now they haven't had much success in getting into work.
Okay. Yeah, no.
I just think in Brighton, I work for Brighton Mayor's Council. In Brighton, we've got a really high homelessness problem, as we have in London. Just walking around the streets today. I wanted to ask Philippa how universal credit is going to help tackle homelessness.
Want to ask that now, or shall we? Yep. Okay.
At the CSJ, we're actually about, who am I speaking to? So I get to
Well,
at the CSJ, we're actually doing a piece of work, we're about to commission a piece of work on homelessness for precisely the reasons that you have just mentioned. And it would appear that the uptick in homelessness is actually to do as much with the termination of short-term tenancies in the private rented sector. I don't know if that's something that you're seeing. And so we've been trying to say actually these tenancies need to become longer, they need to become more stable, and we've recommended the introduction of social lettings agencies as a way of stabilising the private rented sector, because otherwise this constant churn in the private rented sector is what is driving that increase. So obviously it's the most vulnerable people who become homeless with the least skills to maintain a tenancy. So unless there is the same sort of person like yourself who's committed, say, in a housing association context to working with them, you need somebody like that in the private rented sector as well, working alongside them. But this is the sort of thing when I was talking before about somebody walks through the door and you can see that they have vulnerabilities. That is the whole universal support concept that we really need to see developed, because just the delivery of benefits isn't really going to help somebody other than paying their rent. It actually is going to need something much more significant than that. It's going to need some hand-holding, it's going to need some people alongside them, and that's my view where universal support kicks in. I don't know if that helps you.
Do you not think that some of the reforms to housing benefits, the restrictions for under 35s and no control over rents, so that private landlords can pretty much charge what they like, local housing allowance hasn't kept up with that, and there's no changes, as far as I'm aware, proposed under universal credit. So actually the policies that have already happened contributed to that. Do you not agree with that?
And I think it's interesting when you look at the local housing allowance, which has been lowered to the bottom 30%, and you look at the people who need those properties in a private rented sector market. On paper, there are enough. But obviously what we are experiencing is extreme pressure at that bottom end in terms of where people are and whether or not the vacancies match the availabilities. I think the under 35s is difficult too, but you know, lots of people do share properties. I mean, like, you've probably all got friends who live in shared accommodation, and what we're saying in the World Housing Benefit is that needs to be the same choices for people who are earning on good wages, who share with their friends, as on housing benefit. That's the thinking behind that policy.
Okay. Any more? Any more contributions?
Hello.
Ah, sorry.
Hello. My name's Linda. I'm from First Wessex. Carrying on with that point, I hear what you're saying about sharing people under 35 in the private sector that have to share, but normally people in the social rented sector have been given a tenancy for some reason. They've got some sort of vulnerability or something like that. So maybe sharing with other people isn't always the most ideal thing. But we seem to be forgetting that if we're going to impose the LHA, that's frozen for the next 4 years at a certain rate, whereas the rent in the private sector is not frozen in any way at all. It can go up as much as it likes. So it's not going to keep pace, and I think homelessness is going to continue to rise because of that, because of the cumulative effects of imposition of the local housing allowance, cutting the work-related activity group, imposing the benefit cap or lowering the benefit cap. I think we need to be looking at the cumulative effects of those, because I think it's going to increase homelessness.
Well, that's exactly one of the things that Devon, you are looking at, isn't it? The cumulative impacts of reforms.
Yeah, and I think there are I suppose two main points I wanted to make. I'll stand up. So I think when I look at the impact of all of these policies together, I think there's one thing around them that's kind of unifying as a challenge, both for policymakers and on the front line. And one of those is having enough homes, particularly the right homes in the right places, but more generally having enough homes. And if you don't have enough homes, well, actually, you and I and everyone you know will end up paying more for their homes. And whether you're in work, you're in the private rented sector, you're paying your rent happily, you're still paying more than you might want to if there aren't enough homes about. And if you're on a housing benefit and you're relying on support from the state, you're going to be paying more than you have to. And actually, there's a problem outside of the benefit system that if you don't tackle, the benefit system itself is never going to be able to solve. For individuals, though, who are affected, so that's kind of a more macro policy point. For individuals, though, who are affected by some of the policies that we've talked about that might have individual needs around them, I think we've talked about what some of those, some of the opportunities to help those households might be. So the first one would be just to understand actually what is the impact, what is understanding the impact of these policies at from a household by household perspective. So you can get very aware that we're in an environment, and perhaps even more of an environment 2 days from now, where organisations have less support to provide to households that need it. We'll wait and see for a further budget. But if you've got less support, then actually getting that support, getting the right support to the right people, getting the right support to those that need it the most is even more important. So understanding how households are affected in some is one way of doing that. And then understanding what type of support is effective. Now that could be financial support for some, so there might be some in that group who absolutely need discretionary housing payments because actually they're briefed into increasing their own income or tackling that shortfall themselves is limited. But for those where there is an opportunity to help them and support them toward greater independence, I think as more or less one of the things I was saying at the start is one of the roles of a good welfare system should be to support that. And distinguishing between the two is actually really probably something that is way beyond my remit. It's the kind of job that we hopefully try and help frontline advisors do day in, day out, help organisations have sensible policies around. So I don't think that necessarily helps hugely, but it's just to say that the area itself is hugely complex. Understanding it in more detail can help the implementation of some of these challenging reforms and help take advantage of where there may be opportunities to help individuals toward greater independence as well.
Okay, Leslie.
Leslie Pitt from Camden. I think the area that perhaps we've not spoken about, which I'm getting increasingly more and more worried about, is the supported exempt accommodation. And I think, over the years it's become increasingly apparent that perhaps DWP policy and CLG policy doesn't always run along the same lines. And we've got a situation where, if I'm honest, I suspect very few DWP officials actually know what is or isn't a supported exempt accommodation. And so the fact that they've launched a review for the next year and there's a hold on the local housing allowance rates is really great. But what we're finding in London, I'm quite interested for colleagues elsewhere, we're finding that suppliers aren't committing to building new temporary, building more accommodation. They're not even prepared to commit to sort of future funding on it. And so these things have a long lead in, and so then if they're saying now they're not doing stuff, we might be all right for a year, we might be all right for 2 years. 3, 4, 5 years' time, when the review actually announces itself, we're going to be in a real mess. And I just think, it's great to have the review, but we need some certainty now about what the funding is if we're going to get providers for these people, because they're only going to end up in one place, and that's on the street.
So certainty from government, from DWP.
Well, it's a constant, you know me, I don't rant, do I? But I get very upset when I sit in a room with officials from DWP and CLG who say two completely different things about their policy, and they look at local authorities to try and join them up. And we're sitting there saying, help us, we want to work with you, but there has to be an understanding across government that sometimes these policies have got to
be devised in tandem, and not just sort of Treasury driving towards a saving and departments not thinking about how that is delivered sensibly and safely with an agreed outcome.
Do you think, Leslie, that we live in a world of unintended consequences?
Yeah. Nobody has meant this to happen.
No.
Nobody. And, you know, I've sat at various meetings for probably, 3 years, Steve, where I've gone on and on about how worried I am about this. And it's always like there's a review. And so we've just launched another review, and I said, where's all the work we had 3 years ago? And so we start again every time. And it's the poor people who need accommodation that are going to suffer. Not today, not tomorrow, in 5 years' time.
I mean, there is clearly a role within government for debate within departments, because that's how it's structured. And it can seem at times, I think, that there is a bit of silo working going on. I think the same applies in local authorities sometimes as well, because and it's healthy in many ways that there is debate between the various departments in local authorities. But what we're hoping will arise out of that debate, which takes place within government, is that there is a common policy which can be shared and agreed. Obviously not quite there in that case, it seems.
Well, I just wanted to before I just wanted to make sure, we've got wine and drinks there, so make sure everyone gets a chance, and I just wanted to say a few words to move on to that.
Well,
Feel free to, if there was one more, then I don't want to take that opportunity away from that.
No, it's all right, don't worry, we'll go there in a minute.
All guarded under by Sutton. I sort of left Benefits and Welfare Reform about 2 years ago.
Look at you. Yeah.
I'm 18 people.
You can't have a drink.
I'm actually going, 1st of April, I'm going back to head up Beds and Bends again at Sutton.
Yeah.
And obviously, when I first left 2 years ago, on the table was DWP not knowing what housing costs are. Now, for me, I suppose the challenge is what we can do. 2 years on, I'm sitting in the same room with people that have been working on it. And 2 years on, we're still talking about the uncertainty about information that DWP are giving, or the lack of understanding. So I suppose the challenge I'm giving to everyone, what is happening out there to actually get that understanding, because you mentioned implementation is key. Communication in any project is key. If you haven't getting that correct, then it's just a perfect storm. And we're sort of, I'm not saying we're sitting back and not doing nothing, but what collectively can we do, and policy and stuff to it. Bring them to the table and say, look, the key staff at frontline services are not giving the correct information. If that's not correct, the rollout of the whole service isn't going to go smoothly. And then the bundle of people that are mentioned in this room, that's just going to increase. So it's a bit of not a question as such, but just what can we do as a collectively to get them on the table and get this done correct?
Okay. Well, I think what we can do is get together and talk about this over a drink. Maybe we can, maybe we can help resolve this. Philip and then Devon will wind up.
I mean, what's been really one of the main things that's been really interesting for me listening to this conversation has just been the emphasis on training needs, and the fact that it doesn't seem to me as though it seems to me there's been a breakdown between the department and the frontline training. And it's really interesting. It was something that we asked right back at the very, very beginning in 2011 when the Universal Code was first being created. How are we going to take the whole of DWP, Jobs and Plus, etc., through this whole training process? And it was like, people are only going to need 7 weeks. And I was sitting there thinking, I don't know how people are only going to need seven weeks of training. This is a huge transformation that we are undergoing. So if there's one thing that, there's many that I would take back to kind of chat through with Ian, is like a review of the training, and are you actually getting what you need to deliver this? Because actually what you were describing, I think one of the comments you made was that the claimant didn't know what they should be applying for. But actually the claimant should never need to know what they're applying for, because it should be the person taking them through the process who knows what they're able to apply for, and the system itself should actually just automatically give them what they are entitled to. So that really resonated with me. I thought,
just add to what you said.
yeah.
Customers are being told they should know what they need to apply for.
Well, they so shouldn't have to know
That's what they're
they.
being told by staff.
Okay. Okay, I'm hearing you. I've got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I just say something as well? Sorry, because I've been in this world for a very, very long time. And I always remember that when housing benefit came in, there was a big, big emphasis on saying to people, you're not applying, you're claiming for your right. And I think we've lost a bit of that, because I think I absolutely agree with you. People shouldn't be applying for something. They should go along and say, this is me. What do I get because this is me? What support do I get and what benefit do I get? And I think we've lost that, and we've moved back to this kind of, you have to apply for something.
Well, the thinking behind the process, okay, is that you enter who you are,
Absolutely.
and that tells you basically, does automatically what you are entitled to. So
I don't think that's what we're seeing on the ground.
that's very helpful. Thank you. I've got it.
I think what we are, certainly what we are seeing, I'm going to have to declare it now, but I think what I've seen in local authorities recently is a move towards people coming to them and saying, look, I've got some issues. And they might do that by applying for a DHP or for something. But actually, what the local authority does is, has an arrangement to try and establish from that person what it is they really do need, which might not be a DHP, it might be something else. And I think that sort of thing, which is happening more and more with the universal support mechanism, is a very helpful development. Anyway, I'm afraid that's it. 2 minutes, because
less than that, in all honesty. There's a temptation to plug our software, which helps people to determine what's
No, I can't do that.
No, certainly not yet. But I did want to sort of say, well, actually, kind of how we influence government is one theme that I think we haven't really covered in huge detail in this area. And I think one of the things I learned, a lot of it from Philippa actually, is kind of actually how you influence government is by understanding where they are, where they're coming from, and their needs and objectives, which actually, right now is about a low tax, low welfare, high wage society, and actually starting from that process, starting to understanding where they're coming from. The second one is actually having a real clear understanding of the numbers and the analysis and the data, alongside the anecdotes which really bring that to life, but the numbers beneath. And what I've found in working with policymakers throughout the last sort of 7, 8, 9 years is that they are all willing to listen, provided you know exactly what you're talking about. Now, they work in this area, they've had these points made to them, but you need to sort of bring it to them with real hard analysis, evidence, numbers, and they are there, they're open to listening, as I think we can see by the nature of this evening. If policy and practice can help with that, that's one of the reasons why we're here.